The Starlight Wanderer was dying. Captain Park Jinnah could feel it in the way the ship shook with every passing second. Red warning lights filled the bridge. Alarms screamed from every direction. Smoke poured from broken panels, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. "Shields down to 12%, shouted from his engineering station. His hands moved fast across his console, trying to keep the ship alive. "We cannot take another hit, Captain." Park Jinnah gripped the arms of her command chair. Through the main window, she could see them. 12 massive warships surrounded her tiny research vessel. They were ships, covered in dark metal and glowing with purple energy. Each one was 10 times bigger than the Starlight Wanderer. They were known across the galaxy as harvesters. They took living beings from other species and used them for terrible experiments. No one who was captured by them ever returned. "They are hailing us again," said Lee from the communications station. She was the youngest member of the crew, only 23 years old. Her voice was shaking, but she kept working. "Put them through," said Park Jinnah. The main screen flickered. A face appeared. It was Supreme Harvester, the commander of the fleet. His skin was gray and covered with small scales. His eyes were completely black, like empty holes. When he smiled, he showed rows of sharp, needle-like teeth. "Little humans," said, his voice was soft and cold. "Your ship is broken, your weapons are destroyed, you have nowhere to run." He leaned closer to the screen. "I give you 1 hour. Surrender yourselves for processing. If you do not, we will take you by force, and we will not be gentle." The screen went black. The bridge was silent. Park Jinnah looked at her crew, had stopped working. His face was pale. The medical officer was standing near the door with his fists clenched tight. Lee was staring at her console, tears forming in her eyes. They were scientists, researchers. They had come to this region of space to study strange energy signals. They were not soldiers. They had no way to fight 12 warships. "Captain," said quietly, "what do we do?" Park Jinnah stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straight. She was the captain. She had to be strong for her crew. "We are not going to surrender," she said. "They do not take prisoners, they take subjects. I will not let my crew become experiments." She walked to Lee's station and put her hand on the young woman's shoulder. "I need you to send a distress signal, all frequencies, everything we have." Lee wiped her eyes and nodded. "Yes, Captain, but who will hear us? We are so far from any human colony, it would take weeks for help to arrive." Park Jinnah was quiet for a moment. Then she remembered something. A story her grandfather had told her when she was a little girl. A story about the old days before the Great Unification, when humanity still had a war fleet. "Include the Terran Military Emergency Channel," she said. Looked up sharply. "Captain, that frequency has not been used in 200 years. The war fleet was destroyed after the Coalition Wars. Everyone knows that." "Everyone knows what they were told," said Park Jinnah. "My grandfather was a shipbuilder during the wars. He told me stories. He said the fleet was never destroyed. He said it was hidden somewhere waiting." Shook his head. "Captain, those are just old stories, legends. The Galactic Council made humanity destroy all their weapons. It was the condition for peace." "Maybe," said Park Jinnah. "But right now we have no other choice. We can die hopping or we can die without hope. I choose hope." She looked at Lee. "Send the signal, use the old frequency, use all of them. Let anyone who is listening know that humans need help." Lee took a deep breath. Her fingers moved across the console. She typed in the codes and set the frequencies. Then she pressed the button. The signal went out into the darkness of space. It traveled at the speed of light, spreading in all directions. It passed through empty regions where no one lived. It passed through nebulas filled with colorful gas. It went further and further, beyond the borders of known space. And then it reached a place that was not on any map. A region of space filled with strange radiation that blocked all sensors. The locals called it the dead zone. Official records said nothing was there. But something was there. Hidden in the darkness between dead stars, floating silently in the void, there were ships, hundreds of ships. They were massive, bigger than anything the galaxy had seen in 200 years. They were covered in dust and ice. Their lights were dark, their engines were cold. They had been sleeping for a very long time. The distress signal entered the dead zone. It found its way through the radiation. It reached the first ship, a giant vessel called the Humanity's Fury. The signal touched the ship's communication array and something woke up. Deep inside the Humanity's Fury, ancient computers began to work. Systems that had been shut down for centuries started to activate. Lights flickered on, one by one, spreading through the massive ship like blood returning to a frozen body. In a room filled with cryogenic pods, a screen turned on. It showed the distress signal from the Starlight Wanderer. Below the signal, red words appeared. Terran CITIZENS in distress. Emergency Protocol ACTIVATED. Fleet Awakening authorized. The first pod opened with a hiss of cold air. Then another. Then another. All across the ship, all across the hidden fleet, the sleeping giants began to wake. Humanity's forgotten warfleet was rising from the dead. Admiral opened her eyes and saw white light. For a moment she did not know where she was. Her body was cold. Her muscles felt like stone. Her mind was foggy, like she was trying to think through thick mud. Then she remembered the cryogenic pod, the sleep, the waiting. She tried to move, but her arms would not listen. 200 years of frozen sleep had made her body weak. Medical machines around her pod began to work. They pumped warm fluids into her veins. They sent small electric shocks to wake her muscles. Slowly, painfully, she began to feel alive again. A face appeared above her. It was a medical robot, old but still working. Its voice was calm and mechanical. "Admiral, you have been in cryogenic sleep for 217 years. Please remain still. Your body needs time to recover." Ignored the robot. She forced herself to sit up, even though every movement hurt. She was 847 years old now, counting the sleep years. She felt every single one of them. "Why was I awakened?" she asked. Her voice was rough and dry. "Emergency Protocol 7, said the robot. A distress signal was received on the Terran Military Emergency Channel. Human civilians are in danger. Closed her eyes. She had hoped she would never wake up. She had hoped she would sleep forever, dreaming of nothing. But she had made a promise long ago, a promise to protect humanity, no matter what. She opened her eyes and swung her legs off the pod. "Show me the signal." The robot projected a hologram in front of her. She saw a small ship surrounded by enemy vessels. She saw the face of a young captain, scared but brave. She heard the words of the distress call. "This is the research vessel Starlight Wanderer. We are under attack by forces, 12 warships. We have no weapons. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." His face did not change, but something inside her shifted. The cold, empty feeling that had filled her heart for so long began to melt. In its place, something old and familiar returned. Duty, purpose, anger. "How many of the fleet are awakening?" she asked. "All ships are activating, Admiral. 47 Extinction-class dreadnoughts, 200 Reaper-class destroyers. All crew members are being revived." Nodded slowly. She stood up on shaking legs and walked to the window of the medical bay. Outside, she could see other ships in the darkness. Their lights were coming on, one by one, like stars being born. The fleet was waking up. 200 years ago, humanity had fought the coalition wars. 7 alien empires had united to conquer Earth. They thought humans were weak. They thought humans would be easy to enslave. They were wrong. Humanity fought back with a fury that shocked the galaxy. They built ships bigger than anything anyone had ever seen. They created weapons that could destroy moons and crack planets. They won the war, but the cost was terrible. Billions died. Entire colonies were burned to ash. After the war, the Galactic Council demanded that humanity destroy all their weapons. They were afraid of what humans might do with such power. Earth's government agreed. They announced that the war fleet had been melted down and recycled. But that was a lie. A small group of officers refused to destroy the fleet. They believed that one day humanity might need it again. They hid the ships in the dead zone, a region of space so dangerous that no one would ever find them. The crews volunteered to sleep in cryogenic pods, waiting for a signal that might never come. Now that signal had come. The door to the medical bay opened. A woman walked in. She was tall and thin, with short black hair and cold, sharp eyes. She wore the uniform of a Terran Navy commander. "Admiral on deck," said the woman. Her voice showed no emotion. Commander Han said, "I see you are already awake." "I woke 30 minutes before you, Admiral. I have already begun preparing the fleet for combat." Han handed her a data pad. "They have given the civilians 1 hour to surrender. We have 43 minutes remaining." Looked at the data pad. It showed the tactical situation around the Starlight Wanderer, 12 warships, one small, defenseless human vessel. The odds were impossible. But odds had never mattered to humanity. "What is the status of our weapons?" asked. "All systems are coming online. Singularity torpedoes are loaded. Nova lances are charging. Spectre missiles are armed." Han's lips curved into a small, dangerous smile. "They will not know what hit them." Walked toward the bridge of the Humanity's Fury. As she moved through the corridors, she passed other crew members who were waking up. They saluted as she walked by. Some of them had tears in their eyes. They had all thought they would sleep forever. Now they had a purpose again. On the bridge, she found the rest of her senior officers. Chief Minyu was at the weapons station, checking every system with careful hands. Lieutenant was at navigation, calculating jump coordinates. They all stood when she entered. "Admiral," said Minyu, "the fleet is ready. All ships report combat status. We can jump in 5 minutes." Sat in the command chair. It felt familiar, like coming home after a long journey. She looked at the main screen, which showed the location of the Starlight Wanderer. "Open a channel to all ships," she said. "Channel open, Admiral." Took a deep breath. When she spoke, her voice was strong and clear, carrying across every ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral. 200 years ago, we made a promise. We promised to protect humanity, to be the shield that guards our people from the darkness. Today, that promise is called. Human civilians are in danger. They have threatened our people." She paused and let her words sink in. "All ships prepare for jump. We have civilians to rescue, and we have a lesson to teach." Across the fleet, engines roared to life. Ships that had been dead for 2 centuries began to move. The most dangerous military force in the history of the galaxy was about to return. They had no idea what was coming. On the bridge of the Starlight Wanderer, Captain Park Jinnah watched the clock count down. 37 minutes had passed since they gave them 1 hour. 23 minutes remained. No help had come. "Captain," said Lee quietly, "the signal has been sent to every frequency. If anyone was listening, they would have answered by now." Park Jinnah did not reply. She had known deep down that the old stories were probably just stories. There was no hidden fleet. There was no secret army waiting to save them. They were alone. Walked over to her chair. His face was serious. "Captain, they are moving. 3 of their ships are coming closer. I think they are sending boarding teams early." Through the window, Park Jinnah could see the massive alien warships approaching. Their hulls were covered with strange symbols that seemed to move and twist. Smaller ships were launching from their hangars, heading toward the Starlight Wanderer. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. 10 minutes, maybe less." Park Jinnah stood up. If she was going to die, she would die standing. She looked at her crew. They were scared, but none of them were crying anymore. They had accepted their fate. "Everyone, get whatever weapons you can find," she said. "We will not make this easy for them." Nodded and opened a storage locker. Inside were a few plasma pistols and some emergency flares. It was not much, but it was something. He handed weapons to each crew member. Park Jinnah took a pistol and checked its charge. She thought about her family back on Earth. Her mother, who still made traditional food every holiday. Her little brother, who wanted to be a pilot. She would never see them again. "Captain," Lee suddenly shouted. Her voice was high and strange. "Something is happening. My sensors are going crazy." Park Jinnah turned to look at the screen. The readings made no sense. There were energy spikes appearing all around them, dozens of them, growing stronger every second. "What is it?" she asked. "I do not know," said Lee. "It looks like space itself is tearing apart." On the flagship, Supreme Harvester was watching the human ship with amusement. These creatures were so small and weak. They would make excellent subjects for his experiments. He was already thinking about which parts he would harvest first. "Supreme Harvester," said his tactical officer, "we are detecting strange readings around the human vessel." Waved his hand lazily. "Probably their engines failing. Ignore it." "Sir, the readings are getting stronger. They appear to be dimensional rifts." Before could respond, space exploded. 47 points of light appeared simultaneously around the fleet. Each point grew larger and larger, tearing open like wounds in the fabric of reality. Through each hole came a ship. They were enormous. The smallest of them was bigger than anything they had ever built. They were covered in thick armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons glowed with terrible energy. On their hulls, written in letters 100 meters tall, were words in the human language. "Humanity's fury, final answer, no mercy, remember Earth." Stood frozen. His black eyes went wide. His tactical officer was screaming numbers at him, but he could not hear anything. His mind could not process what he was seeing. "Impossible," he whispered. "The human war fleet was destroyed. Everyone knows that." On the bridge of the Humanity's Fury, Admiral watched the ships on her screen. They looked so small now, so weak. "All ships in position, Admiral," said Commander Han. "Weapons locked on all targets, awaiting your orders." Nodded slowly. "Open a channel to the commander." The main screen flickered. His face appeared. He was trying to look calm, but his hands were shaking. His needle teeth were pressed together so hard they might break. "This is Admiral of the Terran Shadow Fleet," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, like a grandmother talking to a child. "You have threatened our people. You have surrounded a civilian vessel and promised to do terrible things to its crew." She paused and let the silence fill the space between them. "I am giving you one chance. Withdraw your fleet now. Release any humans you have captured. Leave this region of space and never return." Stared at her. His pride was screaming at him to fight. He was a supreme harvester of the Dominion. He had conquered dozens of species. He would not run from humans. "You are bluffing," he said. "Those ships are old. Your weapons are outdated. We do not fear anyone." Admiral's expression did not change, but something cold entered her eyes, something very old and very dangerous. "I was hoping you would say that," she said softly. On the Starlight Wanderer, Captain Park Jinnah and her crew watched in disbelief. They could not believe what they were seeing. The giant ships were real. The hidden fleet was real. Help had actually come. "Captain," said, his voice was shaking. "Those ships, I have seen pictures in old history books. Those are extinction-class dreadnoughts. They were built to destroy entire civilizations." Lee was crying again, but this time from joy. "They came. They actually came." On the flagship gave his orders. "All ships attack, destroy the human fleet." His 12 warships turned their weapons toward the Terran vessels. Thousands of missiles launched into space. Energy beams shot across the darkness. They gave everything they had. Admiral watched the attack on her screen. The missiles and beams hit the shields of her ships and disappeared. Not a single vessel was damaged. Not a single system failed. "Admiral," said Commander Han, "they are attacking us." "I noticed," said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke and her voice was cold as ice. "Commander Han, show them what humanity is capable of." Han smiled. It was not a nice smile. "With pleasure, Admiral." The guns of the Terran fleet began to fire. The battle lasted 11 minutes. It was not really a battle. It was an execution. Commander Han sat at her tactical station with perfect calm. Her fingers moved across the controls like a musician playing an instrument. Every command she gave was exact. Every shot her fleet fired found its target. "Reaper Squadron 3, target the 2 ships on the left flank. Singularity torpedoes, fire." From the destroyers, black missiles launched into space. They moved faster than anything they had ever seen. When they hit the alien warships, they did not explode. Instead, they created something far worse. Small points of infinite darkness appeared inside the vessels. Gravity twisted and pulled. Metal screamed as it was crushed into nothing. In seconds, two massive warships were gone, sucked into miniature black holes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. On the flagship watched his ships die. His tactical officer was shouting readings that made no sense. His crew was running in panic. "Those weapons are illegal," screamed. "The Galactic Council banned them 200 years ago." Nobody answered him. They were too busy watching the destruction. The Humanity's Fury turned its main guns toward another group of ships. These were the Nova Lances, weapons that fired concentrated plasma from artificial stars. Chief Minu had spent 200 years dreaming about using them again. "Nova Lances charged and ready," he said. "Fire," said Admiral. Beams of pure sunlight shot across space. They were so bright that the sensors on the Starlight Wanderer had to shut down to avoid being damaged. When the light faded, 3 more ships were melting, their armor running like water, their crews gone in an instant. "7 ships down," reported Han. 5 remaining, 2 are trying to run. "Let no one escape," said. "They need to understand." The Reaper destroyers moved like wolves hunting deer. They surrounded the fleeing ships and fired Spectre missiles, weapons that existed partly in another dimension. The missiles passed through the shields as if they were not there. They appeared inside the enemy ships and exploded. On the Starlight Wanderer, Captain Park Jinnah could not look away from the window. She had seen war movies. She had read history books, but nothing had prepared her for this. "They are destroying them," whispered, "like they are nothing." Lee was monitoring the communications channels. "They are sending distress signals. They are calling for help. They are begging." Park Jinnah felt something strange in her chest. She should have been happy. These aliens had wanted to capture her crew and do terrible things to them. But watching them die so easily, so completely, she felt only fear. Fear of the humans who could do this. 9 ships were gone now. Only 3 remained. 2 of them stopped firing and began broadcasting surrender signals. The third was the flagship, where Supreme Harvester still sat in his command chair. "Supreme Harvester," said his remaining officer, "we must surrender. We cannot win this fight." His pride would not let him accept it. He grabbed the controls of his ship himself and turned toward the Starlight Wanderer. If he was going to die, he would take the humans he came for. "All power to engines," he ordered. "Ram the civilian ship." The flagship shot forward, moving faster than it had ever moved before. It was going to crush the tiny research vessel. On the Humanity's Fury, Admiral saw what was happening. Her eyes narrowed. "He is going for the civilians," said Han. Chief said, "Judgment round now." Minu's hand stopped for just a moment. The Judgment round was the most terrible weapon humanity had ever created. It did not destroy things. It erased them. It broke down matter at the deepest level, removing every atom from existence. He had hoped he would never have to use it again. "Yes, Admiral," he said quietly. A single projectile launched from the Humanity's Fury. It was small, no bigger than a person. It moved slowly at first, then faster and faster. It caught up with the flagship in seconds. When it hit, there was no explosion. There was no fire. There was no debris. The flagship simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, a massive ship filled with thousands of aliens. The next moment there was only empty space. Captain Park Jinnah blinked. She was not sure what she had just seen. The enemy ship had been right in front of her. Now it was gone, not destroyed. Gone, as if it had never been real. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Nobody answered her. The battle was over. Of the 12 warships, 9 had been destroyed. 3 had surrendered. Supreme Harvester was dead, erased from the universe along with his ship. Silence filled the space around the Starlight Wanderer. The civilian crew sat in shock, unable to speak. They had called for help and help had come, but the help was more frightening than the enemy. On the Humanity's Fury, Admiral stood up from her chair. She looked tired. Using the Judgment round always made her tired. It reminded her of the wars, of all the things she had done to keep humanity safe. "Send rescue teams to the civilian ship," she ordered, "and bring me the commanders of the surrendered vessels. I have a message for them to deliver." Commander Han nodded. "What about the surrendered ships themselves?" "Let them keep their ships. Let them keep their lives." Walked toward the door of the bridge. "Dead messengers cannot deliver messages." An hour later, Admiral stood on the captured command ship. Around her were the 3 surviving commanders. They were on their knees, their scales pale with fear. They had seen what happened too. They knew they could be erased just as easily. Looked at them for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was soft and calm. "You will return to your empire. You will tell them what happened here today. You will tell them that the human war fleet still exists. You will tell them that we have weapons they cannot imagine. And you will tell them this." She leaned closer, and her eyes were hard as steel. "The next fleet that threatens human civilians will not receive a warning. There will be no surrender. There will be no survivors. We will come in the night, and we will erase you from history." She straightened up and stepped back. "Now go, run home, and pray that we never meet again." The commanders ran. They ran to their ships and jumped to hyperspace as fast as they could. They would never forget what they saw that day. They would never forget the lesson humanity taught them. Some enemies should never be awakened. 3 days passed after the battle. The Starlight Wanderer floated peacefully in space, connected to one of the massive Terran dreadnoughts by repair cables. Engineers from the Shadow Fleet worked day and night to fix the damaged research vessel. Captain Park Jinnah sat in her quarters, staring at the wall. She had not slept much since the battle. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flagship disappearing, gone in an instant, erased from reality. A knock came at her door. "Come in," she said. The door opened, and an old woman walked in. She had gray hair tied back in a simple style. Her face was lined with wrinkles, and her eyes were kind. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. It took Park Jinnah a moment to recognize her. This gentle grandmother was Admiral, the same woman who had ordered the destruction of 9 warships. "May I sit?" asked the Admiral. Park Jinnah nodded quickly and stood up. "Of course, Admiral, please." Sat down slowly, like someone whose bones ached from too many years. She looked around the small room and smiled softly. "You have a nice ship, Captain, small but full of life. I can see your crew cares for it." "Thank you, Admiral." Park Jinnah did not know what else to say. Studied her face for a moment. "You are afraid of us, are you not?" Park Jinnah wanted to lie. She wanted to say no, she was grateful, she was thankful. But something about the old woman's eyes made lying impossible. "Yes," she admitted, "I am." Nodded slowly. She did not seem offended. "That is a reasonable response. You called for help and monsters came to save you. Different monsters, but monsters all the same." She was quiet for a moment, looking out the small window at the stars. "I was 26 years old when the Coalition Wars began," she said. "I was a young officer on a cargo ship. I watched the aliens burn my home colony. I saw them take my family, my parents, my little sister." Her voice remained calm, but her hands tightened slightly. "I joined the Navy the next day. I swore I would never let that happen to anyone else." Park Jinnah listened in silence. "We built terrible weapons because we had no choice. The aliens were stronger than us, faster than us. They had technology we could not understand, so we created things that no one could defend against. We became the thing that everyone feared." Turned to look at her. "We won the war. We saved humanity, but we also became something else, something dangerous." "Why did you hide the fleet?" Park Jinnah asked. "Why not destroy it like the Council demanded?" "Because we knew the galaxy had not changed. The aliens made peace with us because they were afraid, not because they respected us. If we destroyed our weapons, that fear would fade, and one day someone would come for our people again." She smiled sadly. "We were right, were we not? They came. They thought humans were easy prey." Park Jinnah thought about this. She remembered the Supreme Harvester's confident smile. He had truly believed he could take whatever he wanted. "Thank you," she said finally, "for coming, for saving us." Reached out and patted her hand gently. "That is what we are here for, Captain. We are not heroes. We are not saints. We are simply people who made a promise. A promise to protect our own no matter what. She stood up slowly. Your ship will be repaired by tomorrow. You can return to your research. Live your life, study your stars, be happy. And you, Park Jin asked, what will you do? We will return to our sleep. We will wait again. Hopefully we will never be needed again. She paused at the door. But if you ever need us, Captain, just call. We will always answer. She left and Park Jin was alone again. Far away, in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, representatives from 100 species watched the news from the Outer Rim. The footage showed the Terran fleet destroying the warships. It showed weapons that had been banned for 2 centuries. It showed the terrible power that humanity had hidden. The chamber was filled with angry voices. Aliens shouted accusations. They demanded explanations. They called for sanctions against Earth. The human ambassador walked to the central platform. Her name was Song, and she was famous for her calm in any situation. She waited patiently until the shouting stopped. You have all seen the footage, she said. You know what happened. A civilian research vessel was attacked by They planned to capture our people and use them for experiments. We defended them. With illegal weapons, shouted a representative, with a fleet that was supposed to be destroyed. Song looked at him with cold eyes. Your people attacked our civilians. Your supreme harvester threatened to harvest them like animals, and you dare to speak of laws. The representative went silent. Humanity made a promise 200 years ago, Song continued. We promised to never use our weapons for conquest. We promised to never attack first. We promised to live in peace. She paused and looked around the chamber. We never promised to let our people die. We never promised to be helpless, and we never will. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the representatives whispered among themselves. They were afraid. They had forgotten what humanity was capable of. Now they remembered. In the weeks that followed, the Dominion quietly all their ships from human space. 7 other empires that had been planning moves against human colonies suddenly changed their minds. Pirates and raiders avoided human vessels. The galaxy remembered that humanity was not to be touched. The Shadow Fleet returned to the dead zone. The ships went dark again. The crews entered cryogenic sleep once more. Admiral was the last to enter her pod. She looked out at the sleeping fleet and allowed herself a small smile. They had kept their promise. They had protected their people. Now they could rest again. Months later, the Starlight Wanderer was back to normal. The hull was repaired. The systems were working. The crew was studying strange energy signals once more, just as they had been before the attack. Lee sat at her communication station, monitoring frequencies out of habit. Sometimes she looked at the old Terran military emergency channel. It was quiet now, silent, waiting. She found Captain Park Jin on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Captain, she said, do you think they will ever come back, the fleet, I mean, if we need them again? Park Jin was quiet for a long moment. She thought about Admiral. She thought about the sleeping ships and their ancient crews. She thought about the promise they had made 200 years ago. Yes, she said finally. That is the thing about humanity. We always come when our family calls. No matter how far, no matter how long, we always come. Lee smiled. It was a good thought. Somewhere out there in the darkness between the stars, their protectors were sleeping, waiting, ready. And if anyone ever threatened humanity again, they would wake. They would rise. And they would remind the galaxy why humans were the most dangerous species in the universe. Not because they loved war, but because they loved each other.